Hello and welcome to Heroes of Hampton Roads, an audio and video podcast to introduce you to some of God's choicest servants here in the Hampton Roads region of Virginia. I'll be your host, and my name is Pastor Bob Fox. For the past 30 years, I've been trying to build relationships of trust and affection among Christian leaders so that we can work together and pray together and build the kingdom of God together here in our region. And then hopefully go to the nations together and tell people all over the world about the wonderful news of Jesus Christ. So in the past 30 years, I've met many men and women whose lives and ministries are so outstanding that I think you should meet them also. So I hope you will listen to the series, be inspired, encouraged, and challenged, and pray for them so that they can continue to serve the Lord and serve us in such remarkable ways. God bless you, and thanks for listening. Well, hello everybody. This is Bob Fox again, and I'm here with my new friend, Don Hipple, who is a retired Virginia Beach Police Chaplain of over 21 years with the Virginia Beach Police and then with other departments before then. And Don is kind of a legend in the Virginia Beach Police Department because of his long and extremely successful career helping the police department to deal with the unbelievable daily stresses of being a police officer in Virginia Beach. And I'm sure it's that way in any police department across the country. So I hope you'll get to know and appreciate Don as I do and as the police department does, and also learn a little bit about what it means to be a chaplain with a police department, and also learn, hopefully, why it's so necessary for police departments to have chaplains to support them, as well as people in the community who appreciate and support the police, the fire department, and EMS. They're our first responders, and we need them desperately. And I don't think we understand the depth of their need for our support. So hopefully that'll all happen in the next half hour. Thank you for joining us. And now, without any further ado, let me introduce Don Hipple, who's Chaplain Emeritus with the Virginia Beach Police Department. Welcome, Don.
Thank you, Bob.
Well, I'm honored to have you here, Don. And I don't think most people understand that police departments have chaplains or what those chaplains do. But first of all, why don't you tell a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in the chaplain program?
I had retired from the city of Virginia Beach. I worked in public works, and I met Chaplain Steve Smith. At the time, he was captain of the 4th Precinct, and we were talking, and he said, if you want to do some volunteer work, you're welcome to help us up at the precinct. And I said, well, what's involved? He said, well, we have men that come in and move cars back and forth. They take them down to the garage, have them serviced, but you have one that takes them, and someone's got to bring them back. So it was kind of like you're shifting back and forth.
Right.
And you deliver the mail, and you do different things around the precinct, whatever's needed. Not hard work, not dirty work. And Steve Smith's an ordained minister, and I knew they had chaplains, but it was kind of on a low key. And I started asking him about it. He said, well, we're going to have our first chaplain academy starting soon. He said, you get you the papers if you want to sign up. We can sure use you. So I did, completed the academy and jumped in, and I said, okay, well, let's see where God's going to send us. And it involves 2 o'clock in the morning, you might get called out of bed. It's been a tragedy, been a shooting. Police need a chaplain on the scene. So the first few calls were a little tough. Had a baby death. We had a 4-year-old boy drowned. Name it, all kinds of deaths. The baby deaths, when you're called to the ER or wherever, and a baby has died suddenly, or a little girl, those are the hard ones.
Oh my gosh.
A few years ago, it was probably 10 days before Christmas, I get a call. Cardiac arrest. 4-year-old, 5-year-old girl. So I went. The wife was out Christmas shopping.
Oh my gosh.
The husband, the father, was home with the little girl. She was a premature, which means her organs,
right.
They got to be really careful.
Right.
Well, she had developed some type of a virus or cold. She went into cardiac arrest. They couldn't revive her. They took her to the hospital. Beautiful little red-haired girl. They tried to get hold of the mom. They said, come to the ER at the hospital. Something's happened to Katie. That was the name. So the mother comes, father's there, both sets of grandparents. The little girl's deceased. The homicide detective, naturally, if it's a child death, a homicide detective is going to show up. And I'm in there with the family, and homicide detective said, okay, I've done my preliminary. Let you go in and see Katie, but you're not allowed to touch her. You cannot touch her, even though you want to reach out and grab her, because it's still considered investigation,
Right.
a homicide investigation.
Right.
And that is hard.
Oh my
You
gosh.
got to go in.
Oh my
Little
gosh.
girl, 4 years old.
Can't imagine.
So that was probably a tough case.
I believe
One
it.
more real quick one. It was called to the ER years ago. Infant baby. It died. The husband was a Navy SEAL. He was deployed overseas. The mother, I got there. The mother is sitting holding a deceased baby in a chair with a nurse standing behind her, comforting her. I went in and said, I'm a chaplain with the police department. And I said, I'm just going to stand over here in the corner and say a few words of prayer. I'll stay out of your way, which I did. So I'm there about 10 minutes standing there. And so is there anyone I can call? The mother said, no, my husband's unit here at Little Creek has been notified of what's going on. And they're seeking to get in touch with the dad, my husband, but they're sending a group over from Little Creek. Just about that time, what comes on the intercom but Rockabye Baby?
Oh my
A new
gosh.
birth.
Wow.
I'm saying, why do they have to play that now? We have a dead baby here. Well, anyway, I looked at the nurse. Tears were coming down the nurse's cheeks. I had to turn and get myself together. Anyway, there was a little boy there, probably two, another children. He comes over and kisses the little baby on the cheek, on the head. Looked at the nurse. I said, oh boy, give me a minute. So anyway, as time went on, that period, I said, well, his unit came. There was four Navy SEALs from Little Creek. And I was getting ready to leave the room, and I told them, I said, I'm Chaplain Don Hipple with Beach Police. I said, y'all are here and there. You can attend to the mother, what her needs are. Those guys grabbed me and hugged me like, I said, I can't breathe, guys. Good Lord. I mean, that is a unit of togetherness.
That's
Navy
right.
SEALs.
Much like
And
the
they
police.
support each other.
Yeah. And what you do for one, everybody else appreciates it.
And they appreciate it. I never got the name, never heard from them again.
Exactly.
But that's the type of what the police department is made of. If an officer dies or if his family dies, they're going to get out. They're going to get out of bed. They will come out of vacation to support one another.
Amen. So when that happens, Don, you're there not only for the police but also for the families of the victims.
Mainly for the families. The police officers have a lot of paperwork to do after a case. A death at home with his cardiac arrest, do their reports. They saw what they observed, make sure there was no questionable deaths or homicide or anything like that. The undertaker comes and removes the body. Police usually can clear up. And in that case, the chaplain sometimes will be asked to stay.
You've seen really work well as far as helping police officers deal with the stresses of their job. How have you been able to help them?
Into a police shooting when an officer was actually shot and killed. I've been to the scene, and the officers in this situation, they are numb, and they are not going to talk to anyone. They won't even talk to each other. They'll be standing around like statues. And the first one I went to years ago, the chaplain that was on duty, he said, Don, they're not going to talk to you. When you walk by them, just hit them on the shoulder and walk away. Leave them alone. They know you're there. They know you're there for support. But don't try to engage them and talk, because they're not going to talk to you.
Good word.
Some of them may open up to you, Depends on how well they know you.
So chaplains get to ride around in police cars a lot with the officers. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that usually a good time to get to know them and for them to feel more comfortable with you and talk and things like that?
It is. And I'll tell you, when they feel they can trust you with doing some of their administrative work, which they do a lot of that in the car. They got a computer, they got a whole bag, a suitcase full of forms they have to fill out, traffic reports, not tickets, but parking tickets. Say you have an accident and there's 4 cars involved. Okay, each one of those cars, descriptions have to be written up. And the owner, so you have 2 or 3 forms for each vehicle. It has to be done on hand. An officer there by himself, or even 2 officers, that's a lot of paperwork to do. So that ties the officer up for an hour, maybe 2 hours. You have a chaplain here, he can fill the forms out correctly. That relieves him of about 30 minutes of paperwork. Yes. And they appreciate that.
Yeah, I hear they appreciate it too when they come up on the scene of an accident and they have to take care of the accident victims and all that. And traffic is getting all jammed up because of the accident.
Yes.
So they actually allow the chaplains to go out there and redirect traffic around the accident.
Yes. And we've done that.
Yeah.
Be sure you have your security vest and a whistle.
Yeah.
And of course you'll be taking the training, and you go out and you make sure the scene is safe. Nobody else runs into the scene where you're working.
Exactly. Yeah. And probably one of the hardest things for police to do. I know they really appreciate chaplains helping them out with death notices. I'm sure you've done some of those.
Oh yes. I had a stack of cards, little index cards, and they're very handy. You can put them in your pocket for new chaplains. When you go to a case, first of all, you have the address, name of the victims, or the victim, the deceased, and the family name, and anything else you can write down is helpful. And just hold on to them. I got a stack, probably, 2 inches thick.
Wow.
I got to the point I stopped filling them out.
Right. So many. Well, Don, I know that many chaplains in the Virginia Beach Police Department think you're something of a legend. Obviously, you've been there for a long time, but why is it that they think that you're been so successful as a chaplain?
That's a good question. I think mainly is I've tried to become their friend, and you're not going to become friends with all of them. But there's incidents that come up. Like we have one of our deputy chiefs that retired a few years ago, and we were at something, and his wife was with him, and he said, "This is my wife, Janet," and we got to talking, and she had lost a brother, and she said I reminded her of her brother. I said, okay, even though I was older. So anyway, I said, well, here's my card. She was still kind of grieving. I said, if you want to talk sometime or text, here's my card. Well, we've been texting ever since. It's been 2 years now.
Wow.
So you kind of bond with the people you don't see behind the police officer, the wife or the daughter, whatever. And I've gotten to know Jan very well. And she said, would you consider being my adopted brother? So.
Wow, that's a very special relationship. Speaking of the families of the police officers, would you say that they're under a lot of stress also because their family member is a police officer?
Yes. They're under stress because, first of all, not in it for the money, because some of them are living on pretty tight budgets. And some will tell you that was their own fault. They went out and kind of overspent it on a lot of things. Have husband's on the police department, wife's working as a nurse somewhere, and you have 2 small children that are in daycare, and one's picking them up with daycare, one's taking them here. As the children get older, you've got soccer practice, you've got this practice, that practice, school, all these things factor in. And there's times when the marriage starts, let's say the marriage not falling apart, but the marriage, there's a lot of stress in the marriage. And we're not marriage counselors, but we can listen. And not too many of them are going to open up about their marriage or their feelings. Some will when they feel like they can trust you. They will open up to you, but as a rule, they're pretty tight-lipped. Now, sometimes some will talk to each other. A cop will talk to another cop. It's become a long-time family friend, but they won't talk to a chaplain that they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them will. It just takes a long, slow road to get into the police officer's, you might say, his space.
Yeah.
And we're not there to get into the space. But once they consider letting you in, then you have that confidence build up.
Yeah.
And don't ever betray that confidence.
No, of course not. So
Whatever they tell you stays. The old saying, what they tell you stays within you.
exactly, yeah. Right. So the police forces in general, I'm sure, and Virginia Beach in particular, that you know, what do the officers experience that you would maybe the general public doesn't understand that makes their job so difficult? What would be some of those elements?
They catch a lot of flack. Anger is directed towards the cops
Right.
because they may have gotten a speeding ticket or something. They have to absorb that.
Exactly, yeah.
They have to absorb that.
Day
In the
after
old
day.
days, like say New York City cops up there, that's a whole different realm. They're used to people cussing at them, and they'll cuss right back at the person. They'll cuss right back at you. Virginia Beach cops do not take their vengeance out on the people. And it pushes them to the limit. When you got an angry mob yelling in your face, calling you names, and you've got to somehow keep the lips tight,
Right.
absorb it, and say, "I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry you feel that way. We're here to help you, not hurt you."
Right.
You got to have thick skin. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. And to do that every day, I don't know
Every
of another
day.
job in the United States where people's emotions are put at such risk, where their physical safety is put at such risk, where their family's peace of mind is put at such risk. I mean, spouses and children, because literally the officer doesn't know if he's going to come home alive at night or after a shift, whenever it ends. I don't know of another job like that. Maybe there are, maybe people who work on skyscrapers and walking around girders or something, but it's got to be emotionally and physically one of the most demanding and difficult jobs I've ever run into. And then not to be able to speak to people about it because so much of what they experience is classified. They can't go out and talk about the crimes, the people involved, and so they got to keep it inside, and they really shouldn't be telling their spouses that, because that would just create a lot of tension and stress at home if the spouse knew what the officer went through that day. I mean, it's just like a little pressure cooker, it seems like, would be going on inside a lot of officers. Does that sound true?
It's true, yes. And I'm glad you touched on that point. When they leave that house and hug and kiss their children and their wife, there's no guarantee they're coming home. Michael Phillips, I mentioned earlier, left home. He was on a stakeout for a drug buy, what they call SI, Special Investigations. Left his wife, says, okay, it's Friday night. I'll be working till about 8 the next morning. And he says, I'll come home, take a quick nap, and we'll take the kids to Busch Gardens. Okay, well, he never came home. That was the last thing he said. He was on a stakeout. Something went wrong. He was supposed to be buying drugs. Dealer came up to the car, and I think he saw something in the truck, or Mike's truck, that gave away he was a police officer. I think it was his vest.
Right.
And he shot and killed him right then.
Yeah. And I've heard that even sadder is that sometimes when media will get a hold of this information that a police officer has been shot, and a lot of wives won't even know who it is right away.
Yes.
But the media will know before the wives do. And so they're all sitting at home biting their nails and, just terrified. Was that my husband? Was that my husband? And the kids, was that my daddy? Was that my daddy? I can't imagine that. And to think that that can happen any day of the week because of the responsibilities of their job.
Yes.
Just incredible.
We had a police shooting the other night in the beach, right up here on the boulevard, in town center. I understand there was a suspect. He was in the 7-Eleven with a long knife of some type, and he was trying to rob the 7-Eleven with a knife. Police were called. They responded. When they got there, police told him to drop the knife or whatever he had in his hand.
Mm-hmm.
He wouldn't drop it. He started charging at the police officer. The police officer had no reason except to draw his firearm and shoot the defending. And he killed the suspect. And that's usually kept really quiet until they know what the suspect is. The police officer's name hasn't been identified. But he was automatically put on administrative duty. That's what they do.
Yeah. I just learned about what happens after a police officer fires a weapon. And I was dismayed, I guess is the best term, to find out that they have to go through a long investigation. I mean, the Virginia Beach Police Department is very thorough in investigating these incidents. So the police officer goes on administrative leave, and it could be up to a year or so. And then their gun is taken away. There's a criminal investigation to see if they broke the law. Then there's an administrative investigation to see if they followed all the procedures. And during that time, there's some concerns in the officer that he'll have a job after all the investigation's done. Because, when you're fighting for your life, you do things, out of instinct as well as training, and sometimes you make mistakes. So they get traumatized in the shooting incident itself, and then there's another set of trauma and waiting for a whole year for this thing to be resolved legally and administratively.
Mm-hmm.
It's another stress that I don't think the general public really understands, that when an officer fires a gun, he knows it's going to lead to more stress in his life, more uncertainty. They really are under the microscope, as you mentioned earlier. They're under microscope from the police chief, from the media, from the general public, other officers, and even from the victims. The victims can file complaints and say, he cussed at me, or, he's prejudiced or something like that. And then that creates a whole nother investigation.
Yes.
I don't know of another job in the world where people have to endure that kind of stuff week after week. So I just want to make a couple of points, Don, before we run out of time here. We've got about another 8 minutes. You don't have to be ordained to be a police chaplain. Is that correct?
At the time when I came into it, they say if you want to become ordained, which you have to if you do a wedding. And I've done some police officers' weddings, because that goes through this. You have to be ordained by a local congregation or ecclesiastical body to be able to do a wedding.
Sure.
You'll be signing off wedding license.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes to Richmond. It's filed, and they
Sure.
double check, make sure that you're ordained minister. You don't have to have a ordination to do a funeral.
Right.
Now, counseling, that's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
I'm not a trained counselor, but I have sat and listened to a lot of stuff over the years.
Right.
And I get to the point, I said, I'm sorry, I'm not a counselor. I can listen. I can pray for you and hope. I can direct you to a few licensed counselors that I know that are very good.
Right.
Because I don't want to steer you in the wrong direction.
Right. Chaplains do a lot of referring to other people.
Exactly.
But so the point is that if you're a carpenter or a cook or a Uber driver or whatever, you can become a chaplain if you take the training through the Virginia Beach government. And there's two trainings. One is called the Citizens Police Academy, which is free, open to the public. And they have two versions, kind of for younger people, say under 50, and then for 50 and up. And they meet, I think, 12 weeks, one day a week for 12 weeks. And it's a tremendous education for people who want to know how the police operate, who they are, what kind of issues they deal with. And then the second phase is another 11 or 12 weeks of the Chaplains Academy for people who specifically want to be chaplains. And again, it's free, and you don't have to be ordained. I just want people to know that, because I was not aware of either one of those things for most of my life. Well, and let's talk a little bit about, what have you seen like groups in the community do to support police or fire or EMS? Have you seen anything like that you thought was helpful?
Talking about church groups or religious
groups?
Groups?
Or the Elks, the Moose, the Kiwanis, anybody to show support for the police. What do you think they could do? What would be some good ideas?
I think the Rotary Club of Virginia Beach, they're aware of the chaplain program.
Yeah.
And I think they've made a few comments where they want to start honoring Chaplain of the Year.
Oh, cool.
I'm not sure if that's this year or next year.
Oh, that's good. And of course, they can. The police department love it when you bring over food, like at Christmas and Thanksgiving, or even at other times.
Yes.
I think they prefer food that's been bought in a store rather than home cooked, just to keep it on the safe side.
Right. We have
Yeah.
several at the 4th Precinct, which is where I work out of.
Yeah.
Occasionally, you might come in the precinct 11:30 in the morning. There'll be 5 hot pizzas sitting on the table there. Pizzas, donuts.
Donuts.
This happens sporadically. You never
Right.
know.
Exactly.
Chick-fil-A's even come up. They have a little truck. They'll drive the truck up to the precinct, and they'll announce, "Okay, you guys, at lunchtime, come by the precinct. We have Chick-fil-A sandwiches, no
Mhm.
charge. Come by and
And-
have lunch." But usually they're kind of stressed on time. They have to eat and kind of be in the car at the same time.
Yeah, and of course, every group, churches or civic groups, if they wanted to, could adopt a precinct for, let's say, food gifts. Churches could pray for a precinct, let's say once a month in their services, pray for the safety of the
Yes.
officers and their families. There's all kinds of things like that, but I just hope that the people watching will understand that the police, fire, and EMS, and we've talked mainly about police, but it's really all three, they have very special challenges that very few of us will ever face in our life on a day-to-day basis. They put their lives at risk for us on a day-to-day basis. They save lives on a day-to-day basis. And I think we have ignored them, unfortunately, because we take them for granted, or maybe we have a bad attitude towards them. But I really think that we need to support the police, fire, and EMS a lot more than we have.
Yes.
And Don, what you have done, you have set a high bar, from what I can understand, talking to some police chaplains. You've made chaplains really respected and appreciated within the Virginia Beach Police Department. And I know that they're always looking, they have classes every now and then, they're always looking for new chaplains. So I hope that our little video here today will encourage others, both men and women, to apply to be a Virginia Beach Police chaplain, or Norfolk or Portsmouth or wherever you live and you see this. Check it out, because the more we can support, I think, the first responders, the safer our communities will be, and they deserve our support because of the sacrifices they're making to enforce the law in a way that keeps us safe and peaceful.
Yeah.
Well, Don, thank you for sharing some of your experiences and insights about chaplains in the Virginia Beach Police Department. Thanks for your 21 years of service with the Virginia Beach Police Department. And of course, you did more with others. God bless you. And I hope that you can continue to encourage other younger chaplains in their service with the police. Thank you again.
I'd be privileged to, and thank you for having me do this. I'm glad we got to do it.
Amen. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.